everyone, my name is Leanne, and today I'm going to be bringing you another book haul. I would say I don't know how this has happened, but I know exactly how this has happened. I have no self-control. You know what a book haul is. I don't need to explain the concept to you. We're gonna go fiction, non-fiction, classics, then poetry. Okay? I am so excited to have this book. This is Queenie by Carty-Williams. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition, which is signed, and it has these beautiful pink sprayed edges. Like, I am so obsessed with this book as just like an object. It's one of the most beautiful things that I think I own. So this is about our protagonist Queenie, who is a journalist. I think she's like in her either late 20s or her 30s, and it deals with a lot of similar concerns to books that are about women in that period of their life. You know, it's about navigating her career, her relationships, her family life. This book also has a lot to do with race, and a lot of it is set in Brixton, so I think it really stands out against some of the other books that deal with women in that kind of period of their life. I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and I am kind of obsessed with Carty-Williams to the point where it's a little bit weird. If you've already read this one, do leave me a comment down below because I would love to hear your thoughts. And as ever, all of the books that I talk about will be linked in the description box as well if you want to find out more about them. The next book I picked up was Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler with art by Maria Kalman. You may know the author Daniel Handler better as Lemony Snicket. He is the person behind A Series of Unfortunate Events. But I believe this book is quite different, and it basically just chronicles the story behind why a couple broke up. And this is a book that has been recommended to me a lot because of my life, but I've never actually got around to reading it despite it being on my wish list for years, so I'm really glad that I finally got a copy of this one. I decided to pick this next book up because it was definitely stalking me. Like, I don't know how a book can stalk you, but that's what this book was doing. Like, I'd never heard of this book before, and then I heard of it once, and then I was seeing it everywhere, and not just like online. This wasn't like Google telling me to buy this book. I was seeing it like in charity shops all the time. So eventually I caved and I bought a copy of Where the Lines Bleed by Jesmyn Ward. Now, you probably know Jesmyn Ward better for her novel Sing Unburied Sing. And this is actually her first novel, and it is about a pair of twins, Joshua and Christoph, who have been raised by their blind grandmother on Mississippi's Gulf Coast. Over the course of one summer, they are struggling to find work, and also their parents make a reappearance in their lives, and the brothers are forced into a series of decisions that will ultimately either salvage or ruin their lives. It's a book about familial conflict and the bond between brothers. I've never read any Jesmyn Ward before, so I'm really looking forward to starting with her very first novel. This next one seems a little bit random, but it is Miss Marley by Vanessa LaFay, and this is Vanessa LaFay's prequel to A Christmas Carol that tells the tragic story of a young Jacob Marley. I've read A Christmas Carol before and I really enjoyed it, so it'll be really intriguing to see what kind of perspective the author has brought to this story. The reason I have this one is because my friend had this proof edition of it and he didn't want it, so it's mine now. Next up, we have another proof that I managed to pinch from work, and that is Lanny by Max Porter. Honestly, I don't really know anything about the plot of this book, but I adored his previous novel, if you can call it a novel, Grief is a Thing with Feathers. And honestly, anything Max Porter writes, I'm gonna be interested in, and I've heard nothing but good reviews of this book, especially from Lauren Wade, who very almost convinced me to buy a copy of this on the booktuber meetup, and I'm really glad that I've now got a copy of it, even though it is approved. I think this book is really experimental in form as well, and that's something that I'm really intrigued by, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Next, we have a short story collection, and that is Any Other Mouth by Annalise McIntosh. This is a short story collection that I've wanted for such a long time because it sounds like such a Leanne book. I've heard that these are really frank, gut-wrenching stories about sexual misadventure. There's also a lot to do with family disintegration and finding a sense of self. I've heard the author takes really quite profound and intense personal experiences and reimagines them to really poignant tales. On the blurb, it mentions one story about a woman whose boyfriend is cheating on her with his dead grandma. There's also mention of a lullaby that can enable you to date two people at once. It sounds super strange, but really up my street, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Now, moving on to the nonfiction, and I have 3 nonfiction books to talk to you guys about. The first of those is Sunny Side Up by Susan Calman. Now, you may know Susan Calman as a comedian, or you may know her for her stint on Strictly Come Dancing. I read her first book, Cheer Up Love, which is a book all about dealing with anxiety and depression. I read that last year, and I connected with that book so much. But this book is more about finding happiness and joy and kindness in the world. I don't know how much this book deals with Susan's experience on Strictly Come Dancing, but I've heard her speak about how that was an experience that brought her so much joy into her life. So I do hope that she mentions it at least a little bit in this book, because I am obsessed with Strictly Come Dancing. I'm also going to be seeing Susan Calman at Derby Book Festival, which is why I decided to pick up a copy of this book, and I hope I find just as strong a connection with this book as I did with her previous book. The next book I'm going to talk to you guys about is Constellations by Sinead Gleeson, and this is another absolutely stunning book. My camera really isn't doing justice to how gorgeous this book is, and this one was very kindly sent to me by Pan Macmillan, so thank you very much for sending this one my way. This is an essay collection that has a lot to do with reflecting on womanhood, but particularly what womanhood is like from an Irish perspective, and I think that's quite a unique and powerful and different experience of womanhood than I think a lot of people realise. Because of various bits of legislation that there has been inflicted on women's bodies throughout the history of Ireland, and some of that legislation still remaining, especially in the north of Ireland, I don't think many people realise quite how unique that experience of womanhood is. And this book takes us right from birth through childhood, first loves, motherhood, and experiences of death and grief and ageing. Again, this is one that I've heard nothing but good reviews of, and I think it's going to be a really powerful and touching one. The next book I bought is also a book about womanhood, and that is The Invisible Woman by Helen Walmsley Johnson. I picked this book up on Lena Norm's recommendation. She did a video a while ago that was about, like, self-help books but with a difference, and this one really intrigued me. It is basically about women in their vintage years. It isn't a book about avoiding aging, it is a book about embracing it and thriving in it. And I think there are a lot of books like this about womanhood in your 20s, you know, navigating your 20s, navigating your 30s, but I don't think there are a lot of books like this about women who are that bit older. I think that's because as women get older, they tend to be neglected or made invisible by society, which they really shouldn't be. I have read a lot of those books that are like about navigating your 20s and 30s, and I think it's about time that I read about an experience that is different to my own and, you know, will inevitably come my way. Interrupting your regular haul to tell you that since I filmed that footage, I have received another book, so I thought I would just include it here, and that is Queer Intentions by Amelia Abraham. This non-fiction book is an exploration of what it is like to be LGBT+ or queer in modern Western society and how that compares to other parts of the world. It looks at what progress has been made and what progress is yet to have been made at a time where it seems like queer culture is more mainstream than ever. This book is partly journalistic and partly a personal reflection from the author. I am going to be going to Pan Macmillan's Pride event in Gaze the Word, where this author will also be. I think this is one I will try to read in the first couple days of June. Back to the rest of the video. I also have 3 classics to talk to you guys about. If you've been around this channel a while, you may know that I collect the Penguin English Library editions of classics designed by Coralie Bickford Smith, and whenever I go on a little trip away, I do keep an eye out for these books because I really enjoy having them as an alternative to souvenirs. I went on a day trip to London quite recently and I picked up 2 of them. The first of those is Howard's End by E.M. Forster. This is quite a heartbreaking tale of the connections that are made between 3 families of quite different class groups through lies, love, and death. I don't think I've read any E.M. Forster before. I've certainly not read any of their novels, so I'm really intrigued to see what I think of this one. And another Penguin English Library book I picked up on that same same day trip is one that I've already read, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, this is one of my all-time favourite classics. I absolutely love this book, so I'm really glad that I've now got a copy of it in my favourite edition of classics. This is about a man who wishes that a portrait of him could bear the signs of aging instead of him, and he gets his wish. This painting becomes a hideous secret for Dorian Gray as we follow him down a path of depravity and cruelty. As I said, this is one of my favourite classics of all time, and I really, really recommend it. Now, with collecting the Penguin English Library books, there is a slight challenge in the majority of them are out of print. They brought out some new books in the series last year, and they're still in print, obviously, but the ones that came out in 2012, they're all out of print now. So some of these books are quite rare. So I was so excited to see a copy of Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. Now, this book is in by no means perfect condition, but I have seen this book go for like hundreds and hundreds of pounds, so I was really glad when I found it for a lot cheaper than that. So this is about a character named Jude who really longs to go to university, but he isn't able to do that because of his class and because of a really restrictive marriage. Jude then falls in love with his cousin Sue, and they live quite openly together, and this is really shunned by society. This book was actually burned when it was released because of its really frank depiction of sexual relationships. So I'm really intrigued to see just how scandalous this is. And the final book I'm going to talk to you about is the one poetry book in this haul, and that is Feminine Gospels by Carol Ann Duffy. Carol Ann Duffy is one of my favourite poets of all time. I think she's one of those poets that I really recommend to people for getting into poetry, but I've never actually read Feminine Gospels. Like a lot of Carol Ann Duffy's body of work, this book deals a lot with female identity. They are confessional and they are like modern myths. There are women who are workers, women who are girls next door. There are writers and fairy tale royals in this book. I love Carol Ann Duffy. I've never picked up a Carol Ann Duffy collection and been disappointed by it, so I'm sure this is going to be one that I will absolutely devour. That's it. They are all the books that I've picked up recently. As I've said, all of the books will be linked in the description if you want to find out anything more about them, and if you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I know I say this at the end of every book haul, but I am going to try buy fewer books next month. Let's see how that goes. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. I will talk to you in my next video.